Ozarks, joined today by
Cynthia.
yes, and so we're going to talk about laryngeal function because Cynthia has some questions about vocal health and vocal production. So I want to say a whole bunch of things really quick, and they're kind of like complicated things that people don't talk about all the time. So I just kind of want to say those things and stop me if I'm not making sense. But then you can ask questions because I think maybe if I say all these things, it will answer the questions you're asking before. So the larynx, which is pronounced larynx. Um, Larynx, yeah. Oh, I forgot to grab these. I wanted to show you these so you can see them again
Okay.
when you're at home. So the larynx is located right here. If you like see the side view, and so it's right here. Like if you're talking, you can put your hand on your neck, and where you feel the vibrations happening intensely, that is your larynx. Some slang terms for the larynx are like voice box or Adam's apple. Those all are different, or larynx. Sometimes people say, but larynx is the way we would want to say the word. And the larynx on a male, you usually can see because usually they have a protruding bump, which is what we call the Adam's apple as a slang term. And so the thyroid notch here is like the bumpy thing you can kind of feel, and you can feel these like ridges from the cartilage. But some creatures on earth have a larynx but cannot phonate. In other words, they can't make sounds with their larynx because the larynx, like the primary function of the larynx, is to help with swallowing food and liquid. So if you're able to phonate with your larynx, that's just like a happy like side benefit which humans have. And so the larynx helps to like squeeze and push food down when we're eating. And right above the larynx we have this little flap here called the epiglottis that covers the larynx so that when we are trying to swallow food and liquid, the food and liquid will go into the esophagus down to the stomach rather than down the trachea and into the lungs, which is not so good. And so this is from the top. Like if we, instead of cutting the head in half, if we cut the head off and could look down and see right here, this is what we would see. This is the front and the back. So this is the epiglottis, the little flap deal that comes down. This is what it looks like this way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so these little white things, those are the vocal folds. And so when we inhale, the folds are apart like this, which allows the air to pass through and go down the trachea into the lungs. When we exhale, again, the folds are open, so the air can go through, up the trachea, and come out the end of the vocal tract, which is the mouth, the exit route. Now, so those are, like I say, the primary functions of the larynx: inhalation, exhalation, and helping swallow food or drink. And so the only time that we need to bring the folds together here, and which looks like this. I don't know if I have a picture with the vocal folds closed. That is because we want to phonate, so we bring the folds together, and we, instead of letting the air pass through the open folds and out of our mouth, which would be an exhalation, we bring the folds together. And as the air tries to pass through the folds, a vibration is created, which would sound sort of like a buzzing sound if you had your head chopped off. But because we have all of these resonating chambers, like our sinus cavities and our chest cavity and our mouths, that we can shape, like the sound resonates, and that is why the sound has a beautiful tone when the sound exits out through our mouth. And so when you are singing, your vocal folds must make a connection, ideally a symmetrical, smooth connection, because you have no inflammation, making bumps in these two vocal folds, right? Because you can imagine if you have swelling or inflammation here, then you can't make a symmetrical connection. And when that happens, sometimes, like if you have like a node or if you have a cold or something, or as you age, just like all the rest of our body, it's like you can get presbyphonia, which just means like your vocal folds have aged and your voice sounds worse, or sometimes like your phonation will be interrupted because of the asymmetrical nature of your vocal folds at that point, which is really annoying. But oh, here we go. Here's a picture of what the vocal folds look like when they come together. And you can see here, these two are not completely closed. Yeah, which is too bad. So we must bring the folds together to phonate.
Okay.
Because when the air exits through our trachea, we only have two options: keep the folds open and exhale the air, or bring the folds together and phonate with the air, which just means to make a sound. So what we were talking about last week is that you have a tendency to push too much air between your vocal folds when you are trying to initiate phonation, which can sound sort of like you're smacking the note, and you can hear that sound, right? So like one other time that we do close our vocal folds when we are not phonating is if we're trying to lift something heavy, bear down, like to lift weight, or when we're defecating, sorry. So because you can create air pressure, you close the folds, and if you've inhaled, you can hear that. Can you do that? You create a column of air, and that can provide some extra pressure. But if you do that every once in a while, or make a sound like that, like it's not gonna like kill your voice or whatever, but it's not great for your voice. So you want to avoid doing that too much. The other way of it, initiating your phonation that's not great is the opposite, which is pushing with not enough pressure. So you have like a diffused quality like this, like, which is kind of sort of like whispering. Like if you whisper, you can feel like it makes your voice kind of scratchy. Like you probably have heard people say, don't whisper, it's really hard on your voice. It is. So we can have like the onset, which is too much or pressure, or we can have the diffused onset, which is too little pressure. We want to have the balanced, perfect amount of pressure. And that way we don't have strain or just making sure I'm not going too late, and
which comes
damage.
from your diaphragm.
Right? What comes?
The correct amount of pressure.
You can so your diaphragm is
using it.
Your diaphragm is a muscle that is an involuntary muscle, which means like your heart. You can't decide with your mind consciously, maybe for a monk or something, but and then you've practiced a bunch, but most of us, we can't decide, I'm going to now make my heart beat faster, or I'm going to now make my heart beat slower. You can do some things like breathing exercises or running to make, and the heart will respond and go faster or slower, but you can't just think, I'm going to, like your arm is a voluntary muscle, I'm going to move my arm, I just move my arm. And so you can breathe voluntarily, and you can choose to control your abdominal wall muscles, which are voluntary muscles, but your diaphragm responds to the air entering your lungs, and you don't have to decide to make your diaphragm come back up again. It just will and push the air out through your lungs. What you can consciously choose to control is your abdominal wall muscles, and you can choose to release when you inhale, which is what we've talked about, right? So like all around here, like we talked about. And so you just need the gentle contraction we talked about with the breathing exercises. And if you have the gentle contraction and the full release when you inhale, everything should come out right.
Okay.
Yeah, but if you hear, you've improved so much with your onset since last week. So if you can hear that, like the smooth, balanced onset of phonation, and you don't hear or that's great. So really, and if you can like
the
listen,
hardest part is catching the pitch.
Yes. So right now for you, I would say make your first priority.
I'm trying to do this pitch kind of, because I used
make your
to
first priority the
match
vocal
it.
health aspect.
Yeah.
Because your intonation has been improving this whole time and will continue to, but like vocal health has to be your first concern because of all of your asthma and everything. So I know you can hear and match the pitch. So yeah, that's unfortunate. That's not that is not fair, but that's the way it is.
I'll just keep working on it. It's just one of those things that
Yeah.
I wasn't even aware.